It was a summer morning when the sound of the alarm clock echoed through the house, but this time, unlike any other day, I didn't hesitate to get up. Today was fishing day with Grandpa, an event I had been looking forward to since the beginning of the holidays. At that moment, when I smelled the fresh coffee and saw my grandfather ready with his worn straw hat and old plaid shirt, I knew I was about to live an unforgettable adventure, a story that would echo throughout my life. It was a clear summer morning when I decided to accompany my grandfather on one of his famous fishing trips. He always spoke passionately about the days he spent at the lake, and I was eager to experience it alongside him. We left home very early, before the sun even appeared on the horizon. The air was cool and there was a peaceful silence that you only find in the early hours of the day. My grandfather, with his worn-out straw hat and old plaid shirt, looked like a figure out of a fairy tale. He carried a picnic basket full of goodies prepared by Grandma, and his calloused hands held tightly to his fishing rods. We arrived at the lake shortly after dawn. The water was calm, reflecting the pink and orange sky. My grandfather chose a special place, a small clearing on the bank, where he said the fish were most abundant. He patiently taught me how to set the bait and cast the line. His hands moved with skill and precision, the result of years of practice. As we waited for the fish to bite, he began to tell stories of his past adventures. He talked about the huge fish he caught and the ones he managed to catch only in his imagination, the storms he faced and the sunny mornings like this one. Each story was told with such enthusiasm that I could almost see the fish jumping in front of me. After a while, I felt a tug on my line. My heart sank and, with my grandfather's calm guidance, I began to collect the fish. It was an intense fight, but finally I managed to bring up a beautiful silver fish. My grandfather smiled proudly and helped me put it in the bucket. We spent the rest of the morning fishing and talking. Time seemed to fly by in my grandfather's company, and I was immersed in every moment. At the end of the day, we had a good amount of fish and a lot of new memories. We returned home tired but happy. Grandma was waiting for us with a feast prepared with the fish we brought. Sitting at the table, we laughed and remembered the moments of the day. That fishing trip with my grandfather was more than just an activity. It was a lesson in patience, love, and connection with nature and family. And so, every time I see a lake or smell fresh fish, I am transported back to that unforgettable morning, grateful to have shared those precious moments with my beloved grandfather. The next few days passed quickly, but the memories of that morning at the lake were burned into my mind. Every time I looked at the fish my grandfather and I caught, now proudly displayed in a photograph in the living room, I felt a warmth in my heart and a smile on my face. From that day on, fishing with Grandpa became a tradition. Each summer, I eagerly awaited the start of fishing season, knowing it would be another opportunity to learn, hear stories, and most of all, spend time with him. Each fishing trip had its own charm, but the first always remained special. One year, during one of these fishing trips, my grandfather decided to teach me something new: the art of making hooks. He always made his own hooks, claiming they were more effective than any that could be purchased at the store. We sat by the lake, with the sun setting in the background, and he showed me each step with patience and skill. As we worked, he told me about his father, who taught him the same skill, and how these traditions were passed down from generation to generation. With every loop and bend of the hook, I felt a deeper connection to my grandfather and to ancestors I never knew. It was as if, through that simple task, I was joining a lineage of men who loved fishing and respected nature. On one of these afternoons, when the sky was painted with the colors of the evening and the breeze was blowing gently, my grandfather told me something that I will never forget. He looked at the horizon and said, "You know, kid, fishing isn't just about catching fish. It's about appreciating the moment, being present, and finding peace in the silence. The lake has its own stories to tell, if you know how to listen." Those words stuck with me, echoing in my thoughts even as I grew older and my life became busier. Whenever I felt overwhelmed or stressed, I remembered my grandfather's advice and sought refuge in nature, finding comfort in the simple act of being outdoors, away from the distractions of the modern world. The years passed, and my grandfather, now older and in poor health, could no longer accompany us to the lake. But his passion for fishing and his stories continued to live in me. I still made a point of visiting the lake, alone or with friends, taking with me the teachings and love for the act of fishing that he passed on to me. On one special day, I took my son on his first fishing trip. Sitting next to him, in the same place where my grandfather taught me, I felt a rush of nostalgia and joy. I showed him how to prepare the bait, cast the line, and wait patiently. And, of course, I told him the stories of his great-grandfather, so he would know where this tradition came from. When my son caught his first fish, the smile on his face was a reflection of my own years ago. At that moment, I knew that the flame my grandfather lit would continue to shine through the generations. And so, as the sun set over the horizon, I felt my grandfather's presence beside us, smiling, proud to see the tradition continue. The days continued to pass, each bringing its own joys and challenges, but we always found time to fish. The tradition that my grandfather started, and that I now passed on to my son, became a common thread that united us, a constant reminder of the importance of family, patience, and connection with nature. My grandfather left us for a peaceful winter, surrounded by the family he loved so much. His legacy, however, was deeply rooted in each of us. The following spring, my son and I paid a special tribute. We went to our favorite lake, the one where it all began, and spent the day fishing in silence, reflecting on the memories and lessons it left us. As the sun set, we threw a wreath into the water, a symbolic farewell and a promise that we would continue to honor his memory. My son, holding my hand, looked at me and said, "Dad, one day I'm going to bring my children here and tell them all their great-grandfather's stories." I felt a rush of emotion and pride upon hearing those words, knowing that my grandfather's tradition and values would live on forever. At that moment, I realized that fishing was more than just a pastime. It was a metaphor for life. Patience, attention to detail, respect for nature, and the value of stories passed down from generation to generation were precious lessons that shaped our character and strengthened our family bonds. We returned home with hearts full of love and gratitude. The living room, with the photo of our first fish hanging on the wall, continued to be a place of memories and inspiration. Each fishing trip, each story, and each teaching of my grandfather remained alive in our hearts, guiding and inspiring us with each new day. And so, life continued its course, intertwined with memories of mornings beside the lake, the sound of the waters, and the constant presence of my grandfather. He may be gone, but his spirit, his lessons, and his love for life would continue to guide us, like a star shining in the sky, lighting our path and keeping the flame of tradition and family alive.